Patients at Bay Atlantic University. This event that we're just about to begin in a moment here tonight is part of a series of events that we at GPI are organizing in partnership with our colleagues at Bay Atlantic University, and we do our best to bring to the students who are here this evening and others that may follow us online, experts, outside experts, outside of the faculty of Bay Atlantic University, who we've seen already in other examples, and I'm sure tonight will be just a stellar manifestation of the same, bring different perspectives, different ideas, inject different concepts in the disciplines that you are studying and you are enrolled in here at the university. So the guest tonight is an old friend, is the Reverend Mark Farr, who has a very interesting and varied background, both as a man who's devoted his life to the study and the ministry of religion, but also many other things. Not just, I don't think he's practicing, if I can use that expression at this time. I suppose once a minister, always a minister, but he also has a very interesting background at the highest level. By the way, he's also a psychologist, psychotherapist, but most importantly and relevant to the topic tonight, I think he's got a stellar background in having run dialogues and international, how can I say, meetings, US, Russia, with multiple levels. At the time of the Bush administration, there was an initiative called 1,000 Points of Light. He was directing an important component of that. And that's, we're talking White House level and quite a bit more. And even right now, as we speak, he's involved in international organization that fosters dialogue and gathering of young people all over the world. He was telling me he was recently in Indonesia, where he participated. He may tell you more about that. But anyway, without further ado, I would like to yield to your professor, Professor Chinalu, who will run this meeting. Professor.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. As Dr. Paula said, we have Reverend Farr here to speak with you all about communication. So let's get the road on the show and the show on the road.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the road on the show, I think that sounds just as good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Great. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for that warm introduction, Stella. I hope I'll be Stella. That would be great. And it's lovely to be back here. I know I've done a smaller event with a class that Paolo kindly invited me to. My name is Mark Farr, as I was introduced. And yes, right now, I work for an organization called the Global Peace Foundation, which, as its name kind of implies, is trying to build peace around the world. It uses a kind of innovative approach to doing that with a series of moral guidelines and so forth to try to build peace. And my role inside that is to work with young people, because we believe young people should be at the forefront of building peace around the world. So my job is to build a kind of network of young people who are trained and equipped and led and leaders to build peace. I was recently in Indonesia, but I was also in Mongolia, and I'm going back to Mongolia in June. Is someone here from Mongolia? Are there people here from Mongolia? Hello. I was in UB just not that long ago, riding horses on the steppe, and it was a really amazing thing. We're building a program there to be in June with young people doing that kind of horse riding thing. You probably know it very well, the kind of feeling it is out there in the wild, how they learn to lead and how they learn to own, to run a horse, which is not nothing. Those kind of qualities and that kind of action is exactly the kind of thing which we do at the Global Peace Foundation where I work. But that's not tonight. So tonight, I'm going to talk about my life before that. But I'm going to put it in the context of what I think is the professor's aim, which is to talk about communication. Now, I am very aware that languages here may not always be easy, because there's a lot of diverse places. Turkey, I guess, how many people come from Turkey? Yeah. And there's probably other countries too. So I will try and do my best to be slow. I know I can get fast, but I hope it'll be as interesting as I can make it. That's my plan. And I will tell you more about who I am a little later on because it comes up. But for now, if this thing works, which it does, I want to start by saying this is part of a series. Am I in the way? Yeah. Oh, can it go to the? Yeah, thank you. Part of a series which I call Journey Inward, Journey Outward. All of us have a kind of a life, an internal life, where life we think about inside ourselves, and we have that that world, if you like, and that world interacts with the outside world. And those are two journeys which you will be on all your life. You will. You'll be going inside yourself with your relationships with other people, and you'll probably be looking for jobs and all the other things to do with living these days and earning money and doing something useful in the world. And that's a journey outward. So this comes from a series that I already have, which I wrote, but this is a particular one about communication and what we do with that. And it's called Personal Voice, Professional Life. And I'm going to start with a couple of sentences, if I can get this thing to go. Oh, did something. There it is. I'm going to go back one. Try this. Yes. Okay. Maybe I'll use this. So this is the first. This is the first sort of couple of the two sentences. It's this, and I'll read it out. And again, it's kind of complicated, perhaps in some ways, but the ideas are easy. All communication, everything you do, not just everything you say, but everything, all communication, the way you act, the way you speak, the way I'm standing, sticking my arms in the air, the way I look at you, all of that is humanly constructed. And all of it can be humanly deconstructed. Now, why do I say that? Because in the world of conflict resolution, which I have been doing for 12, 15 years, a lot of stuff happens that you think, I wish we hadn't done that. I wish we could go back to where we were. And my belief is you can. If, let's say, I can't go back to some ancient battle in Turkey or something. I can't do that. But there is some way in which I believe if you construct something with humans, if there were no humans on the earth, if you like, it would be deconstructed. It's possible to go back and undo the things. I do not believe things are fixed. That's a question. Now I'm going to contradict myself with a little video, if this works. Right. So that's the video. Now, certainly it was a communication that my dog was definitely communicating something, but it wasn't human, of course. So I'm already off on track from my comment up here that everything is humanly constructed, because it's not, because my dog was constructing something different. Now, I hope you're understanding, and I hope I'm not going too fast. What was my dog trying to say? I'll give you two choices. One, was he angry? Seemed to be growling. Or one or two, was he hungry? Who thinks he was angry? Well, got an anger, got two. Who thinks he was like hungry? Okay, we got a difference. I like that. Okay, you're right. I think the second group is correct. I've just come home. She's thinking, I want to eat now. That's her communication. She doesn't do a human construction, but she sure does communicate. All right. And I think that now, I can't deconstruct it exactly, but I know it's a silly example in some ways, but the case is I can understand it. I can deconstruct what that dog said and say, oh, I better get her some food because she needs to eat. So that is what I'm saying in that sentence. All communication is humanly constructed. This is going to come back later. And all of it can be humanly deconstructed. If I want to remember one thing about that, it's you have power. You have power. You have agency in the world. Okay, here's another one. it's impossible not to change someone when you interact with them. However superficial or fleeting the interaction, change will occur. I've just looked at you, and the rest of your life will be slightly different because I looked at you. Better or worse, I don't know. And the same with everything you do. It's impossible not to change someone because you will change them and they will change you. We have this enormous floating sea of changes going on. Are you with me so far, as it were? Oh, you are not. That's good. So it's impossible not to change someone when you interact with them because everything you do will communicate who you are, and everything they do will come back the same way. Is there some water? That would be great. I'm thirsty. Thank you. Also, this will come up a little later, but remember this, you cannot not change someone. Now, if I just to tell you a little bit of the meaning of that, when you think about that, you think, okay, if it's impossible not to change something, not to change someone, do I have a, can I decide what I want to do to change them? Can I have agency again? Can I make a difference? Can I choose the kind of change I want to do? When I look at Professor Powell over here, smile at him, he smiles back, or we go and have a beer in some bar somewhere, then he's happy, I think, right? I've changed him, I've chosen to do that. If I came at him with a knife, he'd be unhappy. So the question is, how do you change someone else? How do I, going somewhere, and I have been, I worked on the Turkey issue after this failed coup in 2014. I had some work there. Some of you, of course, may know of that stuff. Oh, thank you. I was there for the water. Great. Thank you so much, David. How do we make those changes? Okay, that may come up later if I get the time. So I'm going to move on. Is there a clock on here too? Right. So this is the journey inward. I'm going to start with the journey inward. This is me, Mark Farr. I was ordained a priest in 1987, which is a long way back, probably for most of you. Doesn't seem that long ago to me, but I got the clerical collar, still drive sports cars, but I was driving then, I was driving Lotuses, now I'm not, I'm driving Kias, but there we go. I was ordained priest in 1987. I qualified as a systemic psychotherapist in 2001. And then I worked in the diplomatic area for about 12 years. Some of that we'll talk about tonight. This is, this is quite an unusual set of qualifications together. In themselves, they're not particularly unusual, but it's not that common to find. It's reasonably common to find religious people in the diplomatic world. In fact, I was working with a lot of them. But it's not at all common to find therapists in the diplomatic world, and it's also not very common to find therapists in the kind of religious world. They're not around because lots of therapists are not very religious. So I am an unusual character, I suppose, and I don't think I look very much like a diplomat. Don't act like a diplomat most of the time, and my dog thinks I'm not a diplomat probably when I don't give her the food in time, like the video. But that has helped me. And as you can see now, I'm on a program with the Global Peace Foundation. And so I'm telling you this now, not because it's good to talk about in a talk, but because it's relevant. It's relevant because the first place I want to start on this journey inward, and it's a big part, is the idea of your voice. What is your voice? When you start thinking about who you are, what is the voice inside you? What is that voice? What does it mean? What does it say? Who are you? Because that is your asset. That is your thing. It's your, no one else is going to have that. No one else is going to be a priest, therapist, diplomat in the particular circumstances I was in. You're going to get your own one, and you have a voice. And it's a super important thing to learn about that. To learn to communicate well. So the first part of what I'm going to say is about voice. And I want to ask you a question. And the question is, what is voice? I can say this, as I was saying, obviously speaking. Who would like to, This is always a dangerous moment when I'm going to ask you a question. Would anyone like to hazard a guess? If there's more than one thing, more than just speaking, what if you were to guess at what goes into voice? Is it something to do with how you communicate? What is a voice? Yeah. Thank you for making me feel good by answering immediately. Yeah.
I think voice is one of the tools that we are using to give our perspective, our idea to someone else or to people. I will say it's a tool to use your out.
Tool, absolutely. That's a great one. It's a tool. I'll take that. If there are any others, that would be great. Yeah.
The voice is a power. Like with a voice, like with your voice, you can tell someone, and with the voice, you can tell someone.
Yes, it's a healing thing. Yes,
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
a power.
Thank you. Those are two, and there's absolutely an almost infinite number. You can talk about the spirit of someone, which is kind of close to the healing. Your spirit can change. Certainly, I have worked with some of the Native American nations here in the United States, and they talk about spirit. The sweat lodges, the work you've done there, is very much about spirit and ideas and depth. How deep you go, how deep you are, will matter in your life. If you float across the surface of your life, you won't achieve. But how deep you go matters. That is part of the voice. And you're thinking about how to develop your voice as a professor or as a student, and then as a working person or as a mother or as a child of your own parents, whoever, whatever. You've got to think about your depth. Voice isn't just that either. And if I'm thinking about my voice, I'm an Englishman originally. I'm now a dual citizen of the United States, United Kingdom, but I still have this voice. And people notice, they say, oh, are you from New Zealand or something like that? No, I say I'm from England. And people like that, or they don't like it. They have a different reaction to me with my voice than if I had an American sound, more American sounding voice. My mother tells me I talk like an American already because she remembers what I used to sound like. But your voice isn't just, it certainly is about spirit and depth. It's a tool for what you use, the sound that you are, the sound that things that you say. It's also coming right in there with the, my going out of the camera's range, by the way, like that. When you speak about yourself. And it isn't always, I can say I'm a priest or I'm a therapist or something like that, but I'm not talking about that now. I'm saying when you talk, you give away something of you, who you are. And that thing you give away, it reveals, whether you like it or not, it reveals your beliefs. It reveals about the beliefs that you have. And so voice is about all of those things. And I hope, I've got one or two tips, that's really all they are tonight, about developing that voice, the self that is you, the real, just the core thing, the core mark, whatever it is. And so, what is voice? It's those things. So here's the first of my little tips, or it's more an extended tip, should I say. And I called it developing your voice. And or at least it's in the section called developing your voice, and I call it second voice, or second landscape. Let's call it second voice. Right. And I ran this past a couple of people, and I know that I'm on thin ice here in terms of gender and some other gender and sexuality, which I had some work in. But I'm going to say that of these two examples, one, there is overwhelming evidence to say one is more like a woman, the things we say, and the other one happens more with men. And we go, and I think both women and men can learn something. Now, and when I give you this example, I'm saying right now, this is not exclusively one gender or the other. People are different, and some people have the things I'm going to say in more fully, and some people don't. But quite often it works in gender. I'm going to start with this one. So here's a very brief conversation. This is one. Okay. The man says, well, I want to do this. Woman says, okay. This sitting at home. I want to do this. Woman says, okay. That's it. Man says, okay, great. He sits down. What's on the TV? Is there football tonight? Whatever. The conversation's done. She said, okay, fine. I'm not even thinking about it anymore. I'm just, is it bedtime? Whatever. Right. That's a man's way of thinking of. Quite often, I ask a question, I get the answer, okay, fine. Head goes blank. Here it is the other way around. And I know, again, this isn't always true. Okay. Woman, well, I want to do this. Man says, okay. Woman thinks, uh-oh, he doesn't know what I was saying. Could I have said it better? Did I say something wrong? Would he think I'm pushy if I say I want to do this? Was he even listening? Right? Now, I know that's not completely true, but there is, in my experience as a therapist, women have a two-layered approach to conversation. They have a conversation up here, which they're having with somebody, let's say their boyfriend or husband or whatever, and it's, I want to do something, let's go out tonight, whatever. And then underneath, they have this other conversation. What is he thinking about that? How do I respond if he says such and such a thing? Do I really want to do this? That's how often, in my experience, women think. They have these two levels, second voice. They have two conversations going on at the same time. Men only really have one conversation. I want to go do this. Okay, great. It's the football on the TV. That's it. Now, those two levels are absolutely precious. They are to be cherished because they develop who you are as a woman, and men can learn this. Everyone can learn it. Those two conversations, that second voice, to develop that second voice, especially if you're male, is a really fantastic thing, and I would advise you to do it. It's true in a professional world as well as is, and I give a personal example, but it's true in the professional world too. When you look at someone over a table and say, I want this job, and they say, well, why do you want it? You've got to understand what that person's asking you in order to answer the question best. You need a second conversation going on. So cherish that second strange voice that you either have or don't have it. If you don't have it, I would encourage you to think about going out from this lecture, how you communicate both, as it were, internally and externally. That's my first tip for tonight. Okay, I'm going to go on. Let me check the time here. I should keep this. There's no clock in this room, so I can't keep up. All right. So here is another one. The Napoleonic voice. What I've called sometimes given this talk before, call it the Napoleonic voice. It's not. That's just that he's just. Oh, sorry. Okay. Finding your Napoleonic voice is in some ways the reverse, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Now, Napoleon was a strange dude. How many people even know what nationality he was? Everyone thinks that he was a Corsican. What nationality, for instance, was Hitler? Adolf Hitler. What was he?
Austrian.
Yeah, the same. He was Austrian. Right. Napoleon was the same. He was a Corsican, which was actually a territory, but it's another story. Now, why am I talking about Napoleon? Because he's still relevant today, actually. He did a remarkable bunch of stuff. He also was a disaster in other ways. He was a crazy guy. He was. He had energy up the wazoo. He was not going to stop. No one was going to stop him until finally the British did stop him. But he was a very, very energetic man. And he changed the laws, many of the laws in France, and then often some of them became European. The laws about how you use literature and language, and even laws to do with how you run a society are Napoleon's laws, thing we still use today. So he wasn't just a military general, but he was a military general too. And I want to talk about one particular, very famous, perhaps the most famous thing he did, which was invade Russia. Napoleon invaded Russia in 1812, famous music. And why did he? Okay, does anyone know why he invaded Russia? I'm not expecting you to answer that one. That would have been really special. One of you had known the answer. He invaded Russia not because he really hated Russia, but he hated the British. And the British had a like a what's the word, kind of merchant relationship. They had an agreement to sell stuff to each other, and he didn't like that. He wanted to starve the British, but he couldn't get across the channel. So he decided to invade Russia to stop them, buying and selling things from the Brits. Just in itself, that's a kind of, if I may say it, ballsy thing to do, right? The other thing about him is he took a risk. It was a disaster, but he took a risk. He invaded Russia in June, which wasn't so bad, but in Russia, in June, it's already getting cold. How many people have been to Russia? Yeah, are you actually Russians here? Okay. Well, June is not bad, but certainly by October, November, it's getting cold there. And then you have the Russian winter, and it was a particularly cold one. He had an army which is the largest army in Europe at the time. That 450,000 men invaded Russia, went across. And by the time he came back, crossing back into France, there was about 10,000 there. He lost about 500,000 men just in his desire to go and stop the British by invading Russia. I mean, it's a thing. It's a stupid thing in many ways, but it is. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, I don't think that was a very good idea, but he had some good battles too. But here's the thing. He was inventive. It was an inventive idea. Stupid idea, killed 500,000 men, but it was certainly inventive. Yeah, come over here. Secondly, he took risks. He is remembered, bad or good, he's a strange guy, bad or good, remembered strangely, but he took risks. He is prepared to take risks. And when he thought he would win and didn't win, he was prepared to go, okay, I'm going to fall over, I'm going to make a mess, but I'm going to get up again, like that song. Now, in some ways, back to my life and the voice, this is a male thing. Let's do it. I can overtake this car. I can do it. I can get past this car and get in behind that truck before I get hit by the car going the other way. And that's what men do. They think, we can do this. I don't know if it's testosterone or something, whatever it is. We go, okay, we'll do this, or it's going to be fine. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, right? Now, again, to do the gender thing, women tend to be more, it's just, again, there's a wealth of data on this, tend to be more careful, tend to be more thoughtful. And they, women, could use a bit of Napoleonic voice, a bit of risk-taking sometimes. Please don't go to an army with 450,000 men and kill them all, but take some risks because it's worth it. And if you want to be, Napoleon is remembered. He is remembered. Bad or good, he's remembered. You can do good. You can do good. So if you want to do good, you need to take some risks. Find your Napoleonic voice. If you aren't a risk taker, take some risks. Make a difference if you want to be remembered. Most people do. Most people want to achieve something. I wanted to achieve something. So, and be prepared to fall over. And oh yeah, and one more thing about that. This sentence, am I going too fast? It looks like you're understanding this thing. This sentence, prepared to fall over. Prepared to fall over, in other words, prepared to make, go belly up. And when you do, say, I knew that was going to happen. Say it to yourself. And when you say it to yourself, not just say it, but mean it, you will fall. I knew I was going to fall over. I hit that car. I couldn't make it past the other one. Darn. But it's okay because I kind of knew it was going to happen. So now I've learned something about myself. I mean, I've meant it. So that's my second tip. If you are the less risk-taking, develop your Napoleonic voice. 2 conversations, second voice, first voice, develop your Napoleonic voice. Okay, another drink here. So, This is still about in communications and developing your voice. This is a third thing I would like to say, and we haven't got my stuff yet, but we will. And it's about what I call differentiation and authenticity. Some of this you'll know, and some of this maybe. I want to start with differentiation. Differentiation in your voice. Well, what does that mean? Our voice is situational. When you talk to your mother, you don't do it the same way as you talk to your dog. Why? Since you've met her now. You don't talk to your dog the same way you talk to your child or your friend. There are different voices that you have, whether you like it or not, but you can control those things, but they are just different. It was a strange thing. I just also already mentioned it, that when you go abroad, you go live abroad like I did. I left England and came here. My voice changed. That's a funny thing. My voice became more American and loose and whatever. Anyway, but I don't just mean the physical voice, but you talk in different voices. Now, most people go, okay, yeah, I get that. I talk to my mother on the phone. I talk to my girlfriend when we're in together, being intimate, whatever. We have a different particular voice, whatever it is, like that. I sort of do mean that. But what I'm saying to you, the tip that I would offer you is start differentiating them in yourselves. Write it down. How do I speak? Do I speak like, especially this is for the work world. When you learn how to do work, you'll have to think, well, what is the voice I want in this circumstance? What is the voice that I have in this lecture or in this meeting? Start differentiating how you want to speak, how you use your voice, how you communicate. That would be one thing. I think in some ways, this is the most important thing of any of them. You can learn that. It isn't just innate in you. You can do it. There's another thing that we don't really have time for, which is called presence. I've talked to different people around the world, and some of them have no presence at all, or very little. They're kind of like weak. And some of them are like dominate. If you look at our presidents, almost all of them have some kind of big presence. Certainly the one we have now has a very, very, whether you like it or not, very, very strong presence. My dad, who died, but my dad was in the army, and he once met Princess Diana. And he told me, it was the only time I heard it, I saw him cry. He said, she had something about her. There was something in that woman. And when she looked at you, she was so interested in, she had presence. Now you can have presence. Yeah. You can have that thing. I wish we had more time to go into that. And presence is a whole host of other stuff to do with nonverbal, the way you sit, the way you stand, the way you, all those things. I can't be tall, I'll never be tall, but I can have a certain presence or not. So that's presence. But I will say one other thing about differentiating. When you're thinking about differentiating your voice, you don't have to be, you don't have to have a, how do I say this? Well, we'll come to it. But when you think about who you are in a world of student in Bay Atlantic University, how you show yourself, how you develop your voice, you don't have to be what people expect you to be. I don't think that matters. So you don't have to look like a suit, if you like, to get a suity kind of job, right? And I'm going to stop there a second and ask you another question. Can someone tell me who wants to be? I'm going to say when you grow up. You know what I mean? When you in the world of work, in the adult world, what kind of jobs are you all looking for? What does the course take you to? Can anyone tell me what are you all looking for jobs after Bay Atlantic? Can someone tell me what they want to do when they leave here? That's an easy one. Yeah.
I'd love to do international security.
International security. What's that?
I'm in focused on more of the region, environmental security. For example, right now we have a looming crisis in Kyrgyzstan in terms of clean water, right? Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan has one of the biggest reserves in the region.
Yep.
But so I'm interested in working with this issue where we can supply with work
Okay.
together with other countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan,
Okay.
and others. So come up with a solution.
That's cool. We come up with a solution to that, right? Yeah. There was one at the back. You want to say it as loud as you can?
I think my work I was, I want to work in space industries.
In space industries?
I've been part of space for a long time. so
Okay.
I want to work in space industries and the recent developments that is happening in the space industry. More and more software engineers are needed because they are using AIs and other kind of programs for launching sequences and other type of things for calculating, landing, launching, most of the things that are
Okay.
happening is basic coding and
Computing stuff, basically.
yeah, and it's needed.
Right. Okay. That's great. That's those two examples. That's fine. Thank you. Now, it used to be that when you left university, you'd have to buy a suit and a tie. And my dad went to work every day, put on his little hat, and he went down to the train and he took the train to London and whatever, came back in a suit. People don't have that anymore. You know, if you work in international security, who knows what you'll dress like, what you work. It may be very informal. I don't think, you know, and I don't just mean dress, but the way people act, the way people live today is not the world that it used to be. I don't know about, I'm sure, I don't know anything about the space industry at all, but, you know, again, the changes have changed it. Now, why am I saying this? Because voice is also who you present as. And there are sort of two ways to do this, I think. In my experience, again, just looking around at what I've done, there are sort of two ways. Of course, there's a million, but I'm going to say there's two ways to approach how you become you in a job environment. One is a surprising way. One is to be surprising, and one is to be unsurprising. Both succeed. I'm going to jump forward, actually. Actually, maybe I'll hold off and I'll come back to it in a second. You've got to, either way, whatever you do, whatever industry you go into or whatever you do, the most important thing, and this is something I'm sure you know well, this is not something particularly new, is that you've got to be you. You have got to be you. It doesn't work. If I try to be Paolo, if I try to be somebody else, people see through it like they're like a knife through butter. They know if you're not authentic or come to authenticity. But so the aim when you are thinking about your voice, along with all the other things, is to say to yourself, how do I most get to be me? Is there an essential me? So I want to stop and show you a video, which in some ways has nothing to do with it at all, but I'm going to show you anyway. Magnificent camera work. Does anyone know what kind of bird that is? They're found all over the world. Yeah.
It's a bird. I mean, I forgot the name of it, but it's a bird that is not.
But they can die because they like miscalculate and stick that beak
They often
in
get
the.
in wrongs, so
They're going very fast.
they can go really high speeds, but they can.
That's true. They're closely related to the hummingbirds. It's a kingfisher, if anyone knew that. And as I say, they're found all over the world. And why am I showing you a video of a kingfisher other than it's completely beautiful? Feel a bit sorry for the fish, but there we go. And because I'm going to read you a poem. Some of you may even know it, called The Kingfisher. Let's see if I can get through it. It's only a sonnet, it's not very long, it's only a few lines. It says this. This is written by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Although he was a religious man, I'm not interested in the religious thing, I'm interested in the other part, really. It says this, and it's an unusual, difficult poem. As kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame. As tumbled over rim in roundy wells, stones ring, like each touch string tells, each hung bell's bow swung, finds tongue to fling out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same, deals out that being indoors, each one dwells. Selves goes itself, myself, it speaks and spells, crying, what I do is me, for that I came. I say more, the just man justices, keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces, acts in God's eye what in God's eye is, Christ, for Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father through the features of men's faces. Difficult, kind of rappy kind of sound to it, right? And a difficult poem in some ways. This is 1877. Why am I reading this poem? Because it's more than any other poem I know. It says, you have come for one thing to do. Whatever your life was supposed to be, that is the thing you are. That's the thing. A kingfisher just catches fire when it comes out of the water like that. If you throw a stone in a well, it will make the same sound each time. Everything it comes to do one thing and not another. So you are you. You aren't the person sitting next to you, and your opportunity now is to do that. Who are you? You've got to be yourself. You've got to be, as it were, the authentic you. You've got to bring an authentic you. It's a beautiful poem, and not an easy poem, but it's a wonderful thing. You've got to be authentic. You've got to be the authentic you. How do we communicate using that voice? What do we want to do? That you don't just, say, okay, what I love is this, like what I want to do is this, the job I want is this. You might want to say, I maybe have a dinner party or whatever you do to eat or socialize with people, and you say, who am I? Who do you see me as? Sit down with your friend and ask them to be blunt. Say, do I look like a space kind of guy? Do you think I could do? And if you are, then tell me so. If you think I can do that, tell me. If you can't, don't. Tell me not to. Start imagining who you are, or ask yourself deeply, who inside do I think I am? Not just what the job is, or whether I love space, or security, whatever. But who is the essential Mark? Who is the essential you? What have I come on this earth for? This moment of light, which will not come again for you or me, I don't think. What are you here for? Because it isn't just a job. That question is a therapist's question. That question is a religious question for people who are religious. And it's a diplomatic question. What did we come here to do? I've done my life in many ways. I've enjoyed it. It's been real fun. But that's a real question I would ask you. How do you get to that authentic thing? As you're here at Bay Atlantic, learning what to do next, the question is, who are you? The question is, who are you? So, I've kind of said this already, but the authentic you is about how we communicate using this voice and who we are and what we want to do. And to be surprising and be unsurprising, these are the two paths. Surprising people don't look like diplomats, but they're diplomats. Surprising people look like something and there's something else. And it works if you're good. If you can back up the stuff you say with who you are, then it's even better. If you just go and, when I did diplomacy, awful lot of men, a lot of grey suits, a lot of dark suits, a lot of ties. There were some people who weren't like that. And some of them failed and some of them didn't. If you go and be the unsurprising man or woman, you will probably, you're less likely to fail, but you're less likely to shine. If you go and be the unsurprising person, you could fail like Napoleon, or you could shine. Those are the two choices you have. I want to show you a few unsurprised, just out of interest, because I was noodling for this for myself. Some people who were surprising. Again, I'm kind of going off track here. Let's start with an easy one. This is not an easy, you're probably going to guess where this one. Here's a dude, nice guy, little twinkle in the eyes. Probably you'll guess who he is. Yeah, who is he? Anyone know? One of the founding fathers. This is Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States. Certainly, yeah, he looks the part of a founding father. He does. And he looks like a nice, kind gentleman. Just the one drawback, slave owner. 600, not only just a slave owner, this is the guy in the founding fathers who wrote that stuff about all men are created equal. He had the most slaves. He wasn't just one of the slave owners. He had the most slaves of any of the founding fathers, about 600 enslaved people. Well, you can sort of say it was a historical context and all the rest of it, and you can certainly say, this is a surprising thing. It's not a surprise. It's not a good surprising thing. It's a bad surprising thing. So it can be good, it can be bad. You can fall on your face afterwards. We remember this. You know, one of his enslaved people, famously Sally Hemings, had a child through Sally. He didn't free her until the end of his own life. He could have done when she had the baby, for God's sake, but she didn't even do that. He didn't even do that. He kept her. Let's do a more positive one. Brian May, lead guitarist of Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, and all that stuff. I know this is probably like ancient history to you, but it was a great song. Queen was a great band. I saw them a couple of times. Brian May, astrophysicist. Do you know that? Maybe you don't even know who Brian May is. He has an advanced degree in astrophysics, and he has a star named after him. And he actually works in astrophysics stuff when he's not. He still plays music. He now has grey hair. That big thing of hair there doesn't look brown anymore. It looks grey. So he has an unusual job. Surprising. Here's another one. Angelina Jolie. Anyone know what her surprising thing is? This kind of goes with it when you see who it is, when you know who it was. Knife thrower. She has a large collection of weapons. She likes knives, she likes guns, and she knows how to use the knife, right? She's learned how to do that. Some of the movies where she had to do that were not stunt people. They were her throwing it into a wall, a knife. She knows how to do that. There's some video of her in some talk show, like flicking this thing. It's like, whoa, Angelina, woo! You know, when you kind of know who she is, it's probably most of you do, you think, actually, I can kind of connect that. But it is surprising. It is surprising. She's not just your average person. Be surprising. A couple more, maybe. Here's someone you may not have heard of. I know, sorry. T.S. Eliot, my favorite poet in the whole wide world. Last century poet, wrote a very famous poem called The Wasteland. And in those days, he was like really important. T.S. Eliot, when he was in his prime, he went to Minneapolis University there. I mean, he went to speak. And they had to go to the football stadium to have him speak there, because 14,000 people showed up just to hear him read his poems, right? He was really important in the country. And he wrote this poem called The Wasteland, which sort of defined, in many ways, the 1920s and 30s and the Depression. Some of you may have heard of him. He's just a fantastic poet and was an important person in the last century. Well, T.S. Eliot was basically a bank teller. You know, when he wrote that poem, The Wasteland, he worked not much different from being that person on the other side of that glass screen. He was actually on the foreign desk, but it wasn't very different. I mean, in Lloyd's Bank, that's a thing, right? Now, so here's the eminence grise of literature working in a bank. One more. Oh, yes, my favorite, probably. Barbie herself, Margot Robbie. Does anyone know what her side gig is? Oh, come on, somebody must know. She is a tattoo artist. She like has the gun. She does her friends. So she has a side, deal too. And interesting thing. Now that's surprising. I'll get that off the screen. So if there's two choices in many ways, or there's a million choices in every direction. But when you think about your life, think about who you are, there may be surprising things inside you that you could use. And as I said before, the reality is many people are somewhere near the norm, the median line of ordinariness. But that's okay. It's not a bad thing. But when you're thinking about it, guys, ladies, whoever, women, think it through. Think, who could I be on this earth? Because I get this chance. I've come to BAU. I work at Global Peace Foundation. I got this chance to change children's lives in Mongolia. And that's an amazing thing. And I want to keep that opportunity. You will have the same. Think it through. Think about how you might be surprising and new and different to do something different. Okay. So I think I've done that. So that was some of the pointers on the way to the journey inward. Now we're going to look at something different with a perfect segue. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. This place, this beautiful bucolic scene is a place. These photographs, the next photographs that I took them all, and this beautiful place here is Leonid Brezhnev's Dacha in Moscow, just outside Moscow on the Moscow River. Most people think the river that flows through Moscow is the Volga, but it isn't. It's the Moscow River. It's a beautiful river, calm, wide, lovely river. And this is Leonid Brezhnev's sort of stately home. Now, Leonid Brezhnev, and we went there. I was part of a delegation what I did for 12 years was try to talk to the Russian Federation about what America can be for them, how they could be good for the Russian Federation. And we hoped they would say things to us. That's what I did all day for a while. And one of the places we went was Leonid Brezhnev. I hope you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. He was like the president, general secretary of the Communist Party, which is basically like being president. Now, I'm showing you this because it's my journey outward. And it was a beautiful, beautiful place, a lovely scene. But this is the Communist Party's head guy. And this beautiful, he was supposed to be a man of the people, a man of the proletariat. But when he wasn't being watched, oh my God, he lived well. And this is just his lodge, right? He had another house even bigger. There's a hunting lodge in the woods. It's a fantastic spot just outside Moscow. It's absolutely lovely. And we did a big dialogue delegation there, and you can kind of just sort of see sort of people in the background actually. But it's a surprising thing, and it's me going outwards. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about journey outward for me, what I did. And this photograph next is kind of more what it looked like. This is also Moscow. This is a classic looking dialogue, which I was involved with. Although our dialogues, the way we organize it, and you'll see a difference in a minute, we organize them in a different way from most people. So down here, this guy, these three people are the sort of senior folks. They sit, sometimes they're in the middle of the long end, but some long sides. But in this picture, these are the important people. This is Yuri Shafranik. He was the oil minister for Russia. That's a big and important post. He is no longer that. He wasn't that. He was a former oil minister even when we did this. But he was certainly a significant oligarch. These two people, Jim Collins, John Biley, are the former ambassadors to Russia from the United States. And he was the head of their delegation. They were the head of our delegation. Down the sides are various people. My ex-girlfriend. Not that really matters. But this woman here, Jill Doherty, sometimes she's on CNN. She was the anchor for CNN Moscow branch. This guy here is the head of the Kennan Institute here in Washington, D.C., and Wilson Center. So what we did was, we didn't have one side Russia, one side America. We dotted them in between. So you talk to people on your left and right. But what's going on here is a look at what dialogue looks like and what I did. You have to speak. You have to have a voice. All the things we've just talked about is what you have to do here. Now, so that's just a little look about how we have conversations. This, at the time, was still the largest, most comprehensive conversation between Russia and America that was going on. It's scary to think that there isn't even this anymore. And once they invaded Ukraine, we had to stop, which is why I have the job I have now. But this was a conversation going on between the Russians and the Americans, which I was participating in. I was just a participant at that table. I did lead one of the tracks, the faith and culture track. And this is the Dartmouth conference. Now, the conversation, which again, I don't know how much you don't need to know. There are nuclear treaties and SALT and then START, which are acronyms for arms reduction treaties. We had no part of that. We aren't the government. We were a private organization or set of organizations. I was the president of an organization called the Sustained Dialogue Institute, the host of this, one of the hosts of this, one of three hosts. But we were talking about how we can lower the tone, use our voices to lower the things that are going on. And these things they went back to Putin then, to our government. And in fact, the start to actually never got off the ground. And this was new. There was a thing called New START, which is the reduction treaty that actually is the last treaty that's still in operation. In 2010, it was signed. The top picture, you can see, as was then, you can see it, maybe you can't, but this is Vice President Biden, who'd gone under for Obama. This is 2010, of course. It was actually, and what we were doing in 2020, 21, 22 was advising the government about New START and saying, we really think you should extend it out. And Anthony Blinken and Putin did actually sign an extension for it in 2021, 2022, just after we had done our work. So we actually felt, I felt I had a part of that to at least keep one treaty going. There is a treaty that's still recognized between the United States and the Russian Federation that limits the use of nuclear weaponry and various other things. You can look it up. Yeah, that's what I did. And, you know, in some ways, that's a journey of conversation. It's a journey of voice. It's where I happened to land up. I never would have thought I would have been doing this stuff, but here I am. And there I was, doing the START treaty, or at least advising in an informal capacity various people. What we did also was we mixed it up. This is just a picture. There's a couple of interesting pictures here. So this is me in Kazan in Tatarstan. Anyone been to Tatarstan? Of course. Yeah, you know that place? Beautiful. This is just out of it. One of these buildings is a mosque and one's a church. And actually, Putin, who gets pretty bad press, and as he should right now, but in fact, he put a lot of money into making these, into rebuilding these, or building them, in fact. And this is what's called the Kremlin in Kazan, which is sort of military buildings. And yeah, so what we did was, we didn't just do, most people just do the talks, the flags in the middle of the room and all that stuff. What we did, we took the Russians and the Americans out on various trips. We put them together in the planes. We put them on coaches together, all that stuff. And so this is, well, actually, these two people are our trip. Most of the people are not. But, what we did was use offline stuff to try to warm up relationships between these generals and admirals and whatever. We also went to a beautiful monastery just outside Moscow. This is the New Jerusalem Monastery, beautiful place. Again, for those of you who might be watching at home, there's Rhonda in the forefront, the beautiful place. So we did those things, and there's Jill Doherty again from CNN. There's actually one more photograph I will show you, at least in this thing. This is a breakfast I had one morning, and I took a photograph of it because it really moved me. It changed my life in some way. It made me think it. So this is just a breakfast. First of all, what you're going to notice is in Russia, so this is the breakfast table. There's only one plate of food. There's how many people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus me, 6, whatever. Only one person's eating. There's a lot of drink. This is the vodka drink, the small one here and here. Everyone's drinking vodka at breakfast, neat, straight. You have to do that, otherwise you are out, right? And then they have wine and obviously the fruit juice as well. So we had these conversations, broken English, The guy here, I won't dwell on it too long. Nice person, Russian, and I don't remember his name. He was a general. His job, and I don't know how he did it, but I think that about a lot of jobs, was don't know what time it was, every 2 weeks or something, he would change he took the nuclear bomb aiming, and he would change where they were going to land in America. And he would pick places like Bay Atlantic University, might be, certainly the White House would have been straight on here. But he would actually pick street names, some of which I even knew that he had picked, that bomb was going to, and they had to move them around so they didn't, get tapped into by the Americans. So he sat there, his only job, or his main job, was to target around the United States and elsewhere, London, whoever, wherever, how many people he was going to kill that day. They decided to drop them. And that was, and I don't know whether you can capture a thing in a photograph, but I wouldn't want that job. He was, because it kind of struck me, wow, you probably would have killed me with your decisions. So anyway, moving on. Here's another thing. So, got to read the room when you talk and think. Mood, people, opportunities. When politicians go into rooms, those are the three things they think about. What's the mood of this room? Do people like me? Do people hate me? Who are the people? Who's important here? What's the opportunities I got? So here's a picture. I'm going to show you two pictures at once. Here's a picture I took, and there's another one taken just a few hours after it. Two kind of similar pictures, right? People sitting around in a room talking. Okay, I got a question for you. In this picture, what is the mood? Anyone give me a word, what it looks like? Suspicious? Official? Yeah. Serious? I think you're getting the mood. I mean, it's just one photograph, you can't tell in some ways. Any others? I think all of those are exactly on point. You're reading it right. This is what you have to do. You have to do it in every circumstance. You have to do it as a politician. So now this is in the Russian state house. This is the Russian Senate, essentially. So important. These guys are the Russians. Here's our friend Yuri again. This guy here is actually the leader. This is Sergei. Back in the thing. He got in trouble because he was yucking up in the Oval Office with Trump. Blank on his name. Anyway, he was former ambassador to the United States, but got put back. And this is the Americans. They as I say, they do the flags and they do the Americans down one side and the Russians down the other. It's a formal photograph. Okay, let's go back to the other one. Tell me what the mood is here. What's the mood here? Is it the same?
It seems like everybody.
Very good. Anything else? What's the mood?
A little bit more relaxed.
I would say that both those comments are exactly right. This is beforehand. This is the American ambassador, as it was, John Huntsman, from Utah, but he was the American ambassador at the time. This is in the American embassy. Here's Jill Doherty again. And these guys, Peter's back. Here are the two of our two former ambassadors. So this is a pre-prep talk. This is all Americans, or let's call them Americans, right? So what's the difference? You don't need a flag to say this. You don't need to talk two flags. Reading the room, this is, and you're exactly right. It's like, I would say attentive, the sense of we're listening to each other, careful, and it's thoughtful. Read the room, you read more warmth, you read something. Now, your job going outward, your voice, your communication, what they're communicating to you is to read that room. This one, well, microphones. You don't need microphones if you're talking with friends, right? And also the really eagle-eyed notice, they've got this like block thing here. So they're slightly higher than us, which is kind of interesting, typical Russian thing. You wouldn't notice it at first, but they kind of look down on us. If you said that. This is the one time this is my moment of glory. This is the one time I probably ever have in my life I did speak for America. The ambassador, he was going to give the talk about my track, about faith and culture, and I was going to say some silly sentence about, you know, the United States said, or he was going to say, the United States believes that we should increase the number of exchanges of religious people between the United States and the Russian Federation or whatever. And he said, "You say it." So I stood up and said that. It was really cool that I, one time in my life, did speak for America. Anyway, that's not important. Reading the room is really important because things we do, people have a narrative, they have a tale to tell. Yeah. So we have to read all of that. I'm going to skip over those. And I'm going to go to this quote about communication, which I used to use a lot with my organization. Listen deeply enough that you are changed by what you hear. If I had a thing to remember my life by, it would be that. Listening is critical. Reading the room is critical. Listen deeply enough that you are changed by what you hear. You listen to the outside situation. So I'm going to skip those. I'm probably going to skip that. Yes. Skip that. I'm going to come to one question. In fact, I want to ask you to talk to the person next to you for just 5 minutes. Would you be willing to do that? I'm going to ask you a question, the question behind me. Not how do you think you change people, like how do you change someone? You tell them to go over there or something. I want you to ask the other person a question. What do you think you do? How good are you at changing people? I want you to turn to your neighbor and tell them or say, how do you think you do that? Is that a doable question? Is that scary? Okay, you've got 2 minutes, 3 minutes. How do you change people? Okay, go for it. Say a little bit, talk about how you change people, what you think your assets are, your voice. And allow the other person to speak if you're doing all the talking, or the other way around. Okay, let's because we haven't got that much time. Yes, actually, give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. Okay, well, that's pretty brief. Yeah, sorry, you'd have a question, please. Sorry, thank you. You got it.
No, I don't have a question.
Oh, okay. Anyone want to comment about what I said? Okay. No.
I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what we discussed with these guys as the one that he says, how gonna change my mind is say first, I don't know. So me, how I change people is I give them perspective.
There you go.
Yeah, somebody in the room knows very much my best friend right there. She knows that I give it all the time a perspective or something.
Right.
So when he say I don't know how change people, I give them perspective. I ask him a question. What card do you like? And then so I like to look and I ask him, what card did you hit? Then he say, listen. And then I ask him, why do you keep missing? And he says, it's Pringle. It's Pringle. And then I told him, okay, I love listen. How are you gonna change my life? So I give him perspective. So this is my way. Well, what can I say?
I'm gonna stop there. Oh, you've already sort of done the thing. I hope that I'm not going to go back, but I hope you found a few things, a few crumbs to listen to and think about as you go forward in your journey inward and your journey outward into the real world, as it were, the outer world that I've found. Let me just stop if there's time for some questions. There may not be any questions, but if there are, I'm very happy to take any. Maybe I've blown you away. There's nothing to say. Oh, there is a question. Oh, and questions online?
The first question is, are there historical examples of Napoleon's speaking style that we can analyze?
That is an in-depth question. I mean, I don't know. What I do know is he had an intense ability when he escaped from his first exile, which he did. I'm not really an expert on Napoleon, but when he escaped from his first exile, he went back to France and stood in front of a bunch of people who were basically against him. And this is in a street, as it were. And he said, "I am your king, right? I'm your emperor." And he could have been shot right there on the spot, but he took that chance. Now, I don't know what his voice was like. I bet there's probably writing about it. But he had an ability to turn people's minds by just standing there. He was a small dude like me. He was probably 5'4", and so he wasn't like impressive physically, but he had an ability at something. He wore a big hat, of course. That probably helped. I could do that. Maybe I could walk around with a big hat. But yeah, so I don't know if there's actually, obviously, there's no recordings of it. What he did have was an incredible ability to have people think, "Wow, this what he's saying matters." That's my response. Obviously, this isn't to talk about Napoleon, but that's my best I can do. Next.
And the second question is, how does tone, pitch, and cadence contribute to voice differentiation?
That's a great question. Could you just repeat it again? Sorry.
How does tone, pitch, and cadence contribute to voice differentiation?
Right. That's a really great question. Thank you. I didn't have a lot of time to go into that, but we do it in one of these courses. Or it's part of the journey in with journey outward course. So how does tone and timbre and pitch make a difference? Well, there's all sorts of ways you can analyze that. Again, there's lots of data for people where people say, well, if you are uncertain about your voice, you often raise it at the end of a sentence. Shall we go out tonight? That's an uncertain sound, right? Or shall we go out tonight? Is more like, it's still a question, but it's like, I feel confident in that question. So it makes a huge difference how you do say something. And so how does it change it? Well, even in Chinese, it going up and down, it changes the whole sense of the word. In English, it doesn't do quite that. But there is a great, what I would say about that is certainly it makes a difference in how you are perceived. And it is one of the things that I would say, and I've sort of saying it to you, that you don't just let it go, okay, I know that kind of matters. Write it down. Say, who am I? Do I talk and then go up at the end when I finish my sentences? Or the more often confident, more like I'm in charge here, I'm telling you that we're going to do it like this. We're going to do it this way. And your voice goes down. Or as a man, obviously, I have a different sound. Now that can be good and bad. Sometimes it can seem overbearing. Toxic masculinity is a real thing. And people feeling they have the assumption that they have the floor and making sure women don't get a chance. So all of those things, of course, matter in the way you approach, how you approach. And that's a therapy. That's a big part of therapy. Often teaching men how to listen to their own voices when they talk, even because they say, well, I said it, but she doesn't hear it that way. You got to say, so you have to sort of think through how you speak. So it's a really good question. I haven't got the time to go into it, but that little example, up and down, and also men assuming that they have this sort of sense that they are the people everyone else votes around. That isn't, and there are flaws that women have too. But certainly, and I would say the piece out of that is how do you think about it? How do you don't just let it happen. Think it through. Think, how do I speak? How do I come across? And in many ways, You can't answer that question. You have to ask other people. That's why you need friends. Yeah. Any others? How do you feel about what I was talking about? No thoughts? Okay, all right. I want to appreciate you. Thank you very much, professors, for inviting me over. I've enjoyed coming and listening, and thank you for being participatory when I've asked you to be. That's always a scary thing when you stand up in front of people. When you stand as well, and I was, a bit conscious of myself, of how I speak and what I do is part of what I say. So I'm kind of reflecting on it, being self-reflective for myself, and I have appreciated you. You've made me feel kind of warm about this in general. So thank you for having me back here, and I'll perhaps see you again. Thank you. Well, I guess so.
Looking at you, ladies and gentlemen, I saw everybody being paying keen attention. I certainly did, and it's not the first time I listened to my kind of colleague Mark. I take quite a bit out of it. I hope the same applies to all of you. Obviously, everybody retains something or something else, but I hope that this is, as they say, thought-provoking. I'm sure it is. So with that, I would like to thank everybody. Professor Una, my colleague here, who actually invited you.
Oh,
you speak.
thank you. Well, I appreciate that.
So, because she's the head of the General Education Department at the University, all the students, your professor, maybe you want to say something because these are your students. Maybe you want.
We're very grateful to BAU and to you, Reverend Farr, for coming over, spending time and sharing your experiences with us, with our interpersonal communication class. And hopefully you did learn something based on what was said for over an hour. So that when you do your journal writing, it will
I see
be perfect.
There's a task attached.
Thank you very much.
I hope it was on point to do with.
It was perfect. Have we
know.
talked about voice?
Right. Oh, you
Have
did?
we talked about differentiation
Okay.
with your tone?
Okay.
Have we talked about the real you, expressing your actual self
Okay.
when you communicate?
We didn't think about that. We didn't talk about it beforehand. Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Oh, Janice. Oh, Janice. Oh, yes.